Welcome to the Dietitian Side Hustle podcast. My name is Katie Dodd, and I'm a nutrition entrepreneur. I spent 7 years as a side hustler before diving into entrepreneurship full time. Before making the leap, I was bringing in 6 figures through my side hustle. If I can do it, you can too. This podcast is for dietitians, interns, and students who want to be inspired to start or perfect the side hustle of their dreams. Let's do this. Hello and welcome to the 243rd episode of the Dietitian Side Hustle podcast, Transitioning to Private Practice with Devin Breeden. If you've ever thought about transitioning from a regular job to private practice but weren't sure where to start, you're in for a treat. Today I am joined by Devin, the Vital RD and creator of Dietitian Practice Pro. So Devin and I actually did meet in real life. We put these pieces together, at least I did, when we hopped on a call earlier. And we actually met in real life in December 2023 at the Practice Revolutions live event in Florida. So it's been so cool catching up with Devin and hearing what he's been up to since we saw each other in real life, with his private practice to shifting to helping other dietitians start their own private practice. So I'm really excited about this conversation today. I think you guys are really going to enjoy it. And Devin, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, Katie. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so as we dive in, my first question, and you can go for as long as you'd want, but I'd love if you could share more with our listeners about you, about your story, about your journey of where you went from being kind of maybe a more traditional dietitian to an entrepreneur to now starting Dietitian Practice Pro.
Definitely, yeah. So I started my career over a decade ago. As I made my way from Texas to Florida, I initially started out as a clinical dietitian, bedside clinician, to kind of get that entry level job, which most of us dietitians kind of go into that realm. I think a majority of us are clinical by trade, and then we decide 2 years in, we're like, we don't want to do this anymore, or we decide to go somewhere else. I actually spent most of my career going from clinical over to the post rehab setting, and then transitioning into hospital leadership. So for 2 years, I was the leader of both nutrition and diabetes at the local hospital, ran departments, had staff, managed budgets, really learned about the business side of healthcare, but also still saw some patients. I actually, during COVID, decided I think I had burnout. Unfortunately, a lot of dietitians get burned out when they get to that place. And I made the decision to walk away and kind of segue into sales and marketing, as a dietitian, working in a home health agency, but not as a dietitian, but as a sales rep. So I worked my way up into account executive doing sales and marketing. And I got connected with a lot of doctors that were like, hey, there's a lot of home health agencies, and which are great to have. We need them for obviously that population that needs it. And I was like, I would always pitch, I'm a dietitian, but I work for this company. And a lot of them are like, oh, we need a dietitian more than we need a home health agency. And I didn't really have the confidence to say I'm going to do, see patients. I would start kind of saying, hey, I'll work with some people, I'll do cash based. It wasn't for about 2 years of being in sales, I decided to move into private practice. At that point, kind of taking all of the connections I had, the amount of information I gained on a lot of the social media networks and channels of all the different people in entrepreneurship doing insurance-based and cash-based practice, other entrepreneurs like Katie here, like just feeding off people and saying, you know what, like I have the confidence to dive into private practice. So for the last year, I have ran a private practice company called Vital Nutrition, or the tagline of the Vital RD, taking on a lot of local and most of Florida referrals via, I do a hybrid in-person and telehealth model, that take insurance-based patients. Um, as I was going through this, I realized I learned how to pretty much create a business, sell it, market it, kind of connect the dots. And I was like, you know what? Like, I see a lot of coaches doing this too, and I kind of enjoy seeing growth. So one thing, when I was in leadership, I got to run departments and run and manage dietitians. I got to see them grow from new grads all the way to specialists. A majority of the dietitians I worked with actually within 2 years had specialties on oncology, renal, nutrition support. I got to see them grow. And I was like, you know what? I want to see dietitians grow, but I want to kind of coach them through that, given the experience I've had going from clinical, which a lot of dietitians, are really good in clinical, to trying to sell what they do as dietitians, and kind of covering everything from the business creation all the way to seeing a patient and managing data and all those things. So I took all that and I started kind of doing one-on-one coaching, which has now led to a 12-week program to where I'm coaching dietitians in a group setting to kind of help with motivation and kind of help create that brand that they want to create from the ground up. So it's been kind of a big, transition over the last decade to kind of get to where I'm at. But I'm excited to tell dietitians that we can go and do these things with the support and obviously the tools that people can provide.
Yes. No, I love your story, and I love how you transitioned. So it was a year ago that you left working traditional job to like go all in on private practice,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Definitely. And I still dabble a little bit and I do some contract work. There's always my foot in the door of a hospital because I like the camaraderie of being in a team. So I definitely love being that expert that comes in and kind of gives my 2 cents and helps. But yeah, it's definitely I left that traditional job to do private practice a year ago today.
Yeah. Oh, today?
Well, I would say a year ago, January, sorry,
Around this
this
time.
year.
Okay,
So, but
okay.
I've
I
been
was like, isn't
officially
it
in
the
private
day?
practice. Yeah, no, the private practice in 1 year, I pretty much start out with 15 a month of clients up to over I think at this point we are doing as a team over 140 visits a month with
Wow.
patients in a year. So and it's continuing to keep growing. I'm adding another dietitian to that team too. So it's definitely been growing. It's been a blessing, but
Yeah.
definitely I'm helping dietitians see that they can do that too. And it's simpler than it needs to be. So.
Yeah. One of the things I love that you were saying is that when you were working in regular jobs, you learned a lot that you are now bringing to full-time entrepreneurship. You
Mhm.
mentioned the leadership that you got when you were in your job, how you ended up working in sales and marketing. And I knew as soon as you said sales and marketing, I'm like, ooh, you're learning so many valuable skills that we didn't learn in school as dietitians. And that's what helps us to be entrepreneurs, is those like pivotal skills. So I
Mhm.
hope people who are listening and maybe they feel like they're stuck in a full-time job, but understanding that sometimes in regular jobs, we can find little gems and find ways that we can grow and learn and take these skills with us when we do transition to whatever it looks like for you. So I love your journey. I love how you're able to pick up all these things along the way, start your own practice, build it, and now helping other dietitians on their journey too. And one piece you mentioned in there was you mentioned that little piece of confidence. You're like, oh, I see this stuff. People are asking me about seeing dietitians, but I'm just not sure yet. And I think that's very relatable. I think a lot of people feel that like, oh, I'm not sure I could do this. So, to my next question for you, many
Mhm. Yeah.
dietitians dream of private practice, but they feel like they're tied to their current job. What mindset shifts are necessary to successfully transition from employment to private practice?
I think the biggest mindset, obviously, you mentioned like confidence, right? When we are day in and day out kind of seeing patients and doing what we can do to help them, it can become very mundane. But the goal really is that if we know we're confident in what we're able to do and we know the type of people we can help, right? It's shifting to saying, I can do this on my own without needing that overhead of that support system, right? But I think it's also like assessing your ability to look at risk in general, right? We have to assess risk tolerance with anything. We have to be willing to say, I'm going to take a chance, right? I'm going to have I'm going to take that risk to actually go through and do this. And then we need to know that, hey, we can make the same amount of money, if not more, working for ourselves, right? I think at the end of the day, we want job security, we want the benefits, we want all those things that come with a position. But there's definitely a ceiling, when it comes to that. But I think it's knowing that we can make the same in that realm with the skills that we have. Because the biggest thing is we learn as dietitians is we have to manage our time. We can manage our time and obviously run a business. The goal is really dedicating those things to be able to focus on the growth of different things. But I think it's just having the confidence, assessing your ability to risk, like what risks you're going to take, and knowing that you can make a comparable, if not more higher level of income working for yourself.
Yes, yes, that's absolutely true. And another piece of working for yourself that we were kind of talking about earlier is that time freedom of being flexible in your schedule to be present with those you care about the most.
Mhm.
Devin, I know you're a dad. I'm a mom. Kids in the season are like so important, and having your own business gives you a little bit more flexibility to have that time freedom. So, yeah. So confidence, working on confidence, assessing risk, and I love that piece of just understanding that like you can do this. So Kind of, I guess, tying into that piece, what are some of the biggest fears or misconceptions that dietitians have about starting private practice? And then more importantly, how can they overcome them?
I think the biggest fear the biggest fear I think is I think is first off like that income level, right? Where we're able to kind of go into something else and actually be able to make the same level of income. I think that's the biggest fear when it comes to it. Um, I would say like in sales and marketing, a lot of things it takes up to I would say like between 12 and 18 months to have a fully functioning like business regarding, especially if you are a what I call like a de novo business, like you're a brand new business, new in the market. It takes 12 to 8 months to really fully establish where you're at. But the goal is if you can plant all those seeds, obviously, along the way of what you're doing right now and saying, hey, I'm going to eventually open up a business and start connecting the dots. Um, I think other fears that people have is can I do this cash based or do I need to take insurance? I think that we're seeing a growing amount of concierge type services. People have abilities to make programs, really expand what they do and create more cash value for a lower like entry cost. Especially when you have a group of people that have this a shared belief, you can definitely get them together and actually do create a program that's cost effective for everybody. Some of my programs I work with a lot of my clients, they're able to join it for $20 a month and work with, five or six other people and motivate each other. And that for a lot of people, they can afford that because that's one meal out when it comes to things. And if you're able to make changes as a group and really be motivated, people are able to join those things and dietitians can start selling and building those. And the amazing thing is once you build out a program, it's that passive income. You can continue to redo it, obviously modify it, update it, but you have that in your back pocket to always be able to utilize it. So I mean, those are two areas I would say that I see the most of regarding fear. Um, and then just not feeling like they have the support. I think when we work for a hospital and we have benefits, when we have leadership looking out for us, we hope leadership is looking out for us, right? The biggest thing is having that support system too. So having like people around us that, other entrepreneurial dietitians, other people that are thriving in business, having that support system, we can transition from needing the hospital support or any other typical day-to-day job support to having that sort of people around us that we can pick the brains of, we can ask questions of, we can keep us motivated. So it's interesting that we can have a different level of support that we would need from a typical 9 to 5 job.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that you're connecting those pieces and it's like it's just different. It's, we can create these systems as full-time entrepreneurs that maybe we had in a traditional job, like you said, of that support and all of that. So thank you. Next question. What are the
Yeah.
3 steps someone should take when they decide to go all in on private practice?
The 3 steps, I would say that my first step that I did when I jumped into this initially was to join as many Facebook related groups that have to do with dietitians and entrepreneurs and sales and marketing. Dietitian Side Hustle being one of those groups, right? As much fuel as you can get to like fuel your motivation to do this. And the good old search function. If you are looking at a certain topic or idea, you have that search function on a lot of these groups to find something that may relate to what you're trying to do. The second thing is really knowing where I'm going to go all the way back to risk again, like knowing where your risk lies and also like your budget for being able to take that risk. A lot of people can't risk, not having a paycheck. So the biggest thing is if you know you're going to start doing this, the goal is to have a separate account to where you can start setting aside whatever you think is 3 months of pay, if you can get to that point. At the very least, a month's pay to take that big leap would be the bare minimum.
Hmm.
Um, I did this with no debt and no savings. I just decided to move in and do it. Also, I mean, I think having a spouse that took on a full-time job at that time did help me a little bit, but I think having that extra level of support was super helpful.
Yeah.
And then I think the third thing is, um, I'm drawing a blank right now. The third thing would be that we're trying to find, I guess, rephrase, what was the question? I'm drawing a blank right now.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So, like 3 steps if someone decides to go all in on private practice. And so far, you're talking like join Facebook communities, like get around these humans, know where your risk is, kind of budget out. What do you need in order to leave?
And then the last thing would be to start connecting the dots for where you would get referrals from. I think finding that platform of where you feel like you're going to get business from. If you're not a strong social media person, then obviously then you would focus on obviously like direct to patient or direct to provider, especially if you're in the MNT space where I'm at more chronic illness. If that's your realm, connect with the people that may potentially be sending you who you need. Now, if you're still working, and I think a lot of people are like, what do I do while I'm still working? Start connecting with a lot of the doctors you work with because you'll realize a lot of the doctors that work in the hospital work outside the hospital. Most of them don't just work there unless they're a hospitalist. But the
Yep.
biggest thing is you're going to know a lot of these people. And if you get in good with a couple of those doctors and know who they are, guess what? They have a lot of friends that are also doctors. And it creates that snowball effect that we need
Yep.
to create that brand. One thing to tell people is we don't always have to be the best dietitian. We have to be the most known dietitian. So it's one of those things in that shift that you have to just become more known. So once you're able to do that, I tell people like, do you save doctors' numbers? Do you have their cell phones? I know it's super weird, but when you're in sales and marketing, that cell phone number is the best way to contact someone to send you a referral. And a lot of doctors, they want to know that their people are taken care of. So I mean, like it's definitely that extra layer. But those are the three areas I think that are the most important, at least when I moved into this, that I'm like, I need those to feel good and confident.
Yeah, I loved everything that you said there. I liked how you talked about really just that inspiration, utilizing resources that are already out there through free Facebook groups. I love that you mentioned the search function because there is so much value in these entrepreneurial Facebook groups. When you start searching, the questions you probably have now have been asked and answered. And so you
Yeah.
can, without that awkwardness of like, oh, I don't want to post. Um, Planning out. I love that. When I made the decision to leave my full-time job, I like what you said about how like figure out your level of risk because we all have different situations. You mentioned, well, I
Hmm.
have a spouse who's got a full-time job. That helps. And we're all
Yeah.
in different situations. So what is your situation and what is your level of risk tolerance? Now, for me, I like safety nets for my safety nets. So when I left my job, my goal was pay off all of my debts and I only had like two small debts left. So it wasn't a big deal. And then I actually wanted to save up 6 months worth of paychecks, like so how much I would have been making if I was working at my old job at the VA. And so I actually had that in savings before I left. But I also came up with a detailed plan of, okay, if this is what I want, how am I going to make that happen quickly? And I actually, from making the plan to leaving my job, it was 3 months. So it doesn't have to be like crazy long. But I like that advice of like, it's almost like getting it on paper and figuring out, well, what do I need to leave? What makes me feel good and comfortable? And some people
Hmm.
are like, I love risk. I will dive in with nothing. And other people are like, whoa, whoa, whoa. But assess your level of risk. That was good. And then
Yeah.
the last piece you were talking about was just building your network. And as you were saying that, when you were talking about the doctors, about how like, well, they work outside, they know other doctors, it reminded me of a conference that I was at. And a dietitian looked in the crowd and she said, they are looking for you. And it was this reminder, and I think all of us should remember this. There are people out there looking for us,
Hmm.
people out there looking for good dietitians who could help them, who could help their customers. And it's just a matter of networking. And the way you said it, you don't even have to be the best, you just have to be the most known.
The most
So
known.
yeah, that that's really good advice. I think of my blog, The Geriatric Dietitian. I've often said I'm not the best geriatric dietitian, though I'm pretty darn good. But when you Google things related to my niche, it brings up my website, The Geriatric Dietitian, with my face, and it does give me authority. It gives me opportunities. And I
Hmm.
have people coming to me to offer me these amazing gigs. So this is wonderful advice. Inspiration, get in the right rooms, make a plan, and build your network. Because if you want to have a practice, you got to have people to sell to.
Hmm. Exactly.
Awesome. So, for those who are like, okay, this sounds great, but I don't know about this. I don't know about taking the leap. For the dietitian who's hesitant to take the leap, what's one piece of advice that you would give them to build confidence and take action?
I think the biggest thing is assess your vision of what you want to get out of anything. I think when it comes to private practice, looking at that big picture, what do you visualize your life looking like if you were your own boss, if you ran your own business, right? What would that look for you? Like, I think it's like the vision boards we do and things like that. We look at the big picture, but I think that is a starting point. If it's like, I want to have my weekends back, I want to be done at 4 o'clock every day, I want to spend time with my kids, obviously assess all those things to see what running your own business would do to get you to that point. Um, but the biggest thing is obviously feed off other people and ask those questions. Find the free advice out there. Get that motivation to kind of make that next step. There's so many entrepreneur dietitians, there's coaches that do so many things for free that you can take advantage of that kind of give you that motivation to move into the next level. Um, and then start having that discussion with the people around you, your support system, whether it's a spouse, family members, colleagues, even I would say even like your manager at work, like they want to support your growth. I mean, they don't want to lose somebody, but I think those people can help you feel like that next step and that motivated to move to the next level. But I think it's just I think it's assessing your vision and obviously having the motivation to move forward. And Eliza said a lot of people can move into utilizing coaches like me and things like that and do those calls and invest in that. That's always an available option as well. But as I was stating earlier, like I'm one of those people that's very frugal.
Mhm.
And I don't like to spend, so I will use as much free as I can until I'm like, okay, now I need to pay for something. But definitely exhaust all the free things before you dive into something that you're paying for.
Yeah, yeah. And I love what you said about assess your vision. Do you do vision boards, Devin?
I did one in 2023 as part of that program.
Yeah.
I actually in January, I always reassess my business model because it's always changing. So I had probably not the dry race behind me, but I had one that was actually about 10 feet wide. I was in Ohio. I was on vacation. I pretty much wrote January all the way to December on a board and wrote what I wanted to accomplish in the next 12 months. Whether it was a personal, financial growth, trips, everything that I felt like I needed to do. And there was enough space to draw and cartoon and just really see it. And then
Yeah.
I was like, okay, here's my board. And now what's my next step? What do I need to do to get to that financial goal? How many people do I need to see? If I'm going to do this coaching thing, how many people would I need to do to cut off or to break even for what I was making doing one-on-one consulting? It was really just seeing it visually. Not everybody's a visual learner, but I definitely need to see it in front of me and see the beginning to end and where I need to go. Um, and I think making that time, specifying like I'm going to take time off and have time for myself, I think was super important because I think we preach self-care as dietitians and taking care of ourselves. So if we don't lay it out there that we're going to have that vacation, that we're going to have that trip, and that we know we can get to that point financially, be able to do that based on, the numbers. We learn so much math and statistics. So the biggest thing is just like putting those things together to
Yeah.
get to that next level.
Yeah. I love that. And I love that you made a vision board at the end of 2023 and look at all that you've done since then.
Oh yeah.
There really is so much power, I think, in envisioning what do we want life to look like. Most people only ever dream about starting a practice, pursuing their dreams, becoming an entrepreneur. But when we actually envision what would this actually look like you said, like what would my weekends look like? What would my time look like? And we start picturing that in the future, it's really going to drive and inspire us to take action. I am a vision board person. That is what helped me to lead my job. And actually, I just made new vision boards this year. I made one for me, and actually, I did one with my kids. I asked my kids, like, okay, what do we want to accomplish this year? What do you want to do? What do you want to experience? And so we have a family vision board, and it has fun stuff like learning how to make bubblegum donuts. My daughter's still working on learning to ride the bike. That's been a thing. So the goal is this year that we're going to go on a family bike ride. And so love vision boards. I think that they are really, really powerful because it reminds us we can do the thing. Life
Hmm.
can look like this. Yeah,
Exactly.
awesome. So other things that you want to share to anyone listening about transitioning to private practice? Like anything else before we kind of wrap things up? Any other advice or things that you'd like to share with listeners?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is that we can move into this realm no matter like where we're at in life. I think the biggest thing is like It's really just your willingness to want to move forward to running your own company. As I said, there's students out there that are maybe like, hey, I want to go into sales, I want to go into marketing, I have that motivation. There are people that I have a couple like PhD, people that I coach that are PhD dietitians that went in academia and like were teaching, and they're like, you know what, I want to find that retirement. I want to have
Yeah.
that position where I do private practice. So I mean, there's never a time not to start to do this and start thinking about what ifs with anything, whether it's a side gig, working 1 day a week, doing some things on at nighttime to doing this, 4 or 5 days a week. It's really just starting that you can do this no matter where you're at in your career or life. I think that's important for everybody to realize that it doesn't make a difference of the time that you're doing it. Um, and that the fact that there's so many resources out there, and it'll help you obviously feel motivated to continue to move forward with the private practice as well. And I would say that one thing I have learned that, there's no lack of opportunity as dietitians. I have found out like technically leaving dietetics and coming back to it, realizing how much I could possibly do as a dietitian to help more people and create advocacy and obviously growth of what we do as dietitians. So I think the biggest thing is people don't know there's opportunity to do things until they see other people doing it. So it's definitely like, there's there's a lot of things you can do. And I think that I work with a lot of students and interns that they're like, I thought it was just, I could just see patients in a hospital all day, and it becomes like the typecast like dietitian, and I'm like, no, like you can go and you can speak at I teach courses at a retirement community. I speak publicly at expos. There's so many things that you can do. I think that sometimes my mentor students think I'm crazy, because I've had someone shadow me and I think I had 6 sources of income in 1 day. And they're like, I didn't know how much you could do in a day as a dietitian. And I'm like, this is what an entrepreneur does. But at the end of the day, I only worked 6 hours, and I was able to take and only work 6 hours, and I made the amount of money I made in probably 24 hours at the hospital
Yep.
because I changed my mindset and I'm able to like obviously able to do all these things and utilize the skills as a dietitian. So never think that you're just a clinical dietitian. You're well beyond what that is. So that's my biggest thing, my aha moment with this in the last 10 years.
So good. Entrepreneurship is playing a different game. It's not just the time for money game. It's the we can do anything, and there's creativity and just all kinds of fun things we could do. So, Devin, thank you for coming on the podcast today. I feel like we covered so much related to mindset and practical tips, and I hope that people listening are like, okay, you know what? I think now is the time that I'm really going to start considering what this could look like to go from, where I'm at to having a practice. So, if people want to learn more about what it is that you do, connect with you online, where can they find you?
So they can go to it's the diet or dietitianpracticepro.com is the direct website that will lead you to my information on what I do. You can also book a discovery call with me through that website as well. I do social media, same tagline, the Dietitian Practice Pro on Instagram and on Facebook. And then you're definitely welcome to email me as well. It is my Vital RD email. It's devin@thevitalrd.com. You can definitely message me on Facebook as well. I try to respond to everybody. And if you're toying with the idea of running a private practice, you can definitely pick my brain over a couple messages to see if this is even something that you're ready to do. But I'm here to help people wherever they're at. But any one of those channels, and I'm looking forward to connecting with more people and kind of showing what we can really do in business as a dietitian.
Awesome. So go connect with Devin online. Reach out if you have questions. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. And for everyone listening, thanks so much for listening to the podcast. And I'll see you next week.